and then we'll get going. There we go. All right, good afternoon, everybody. I'm very happy to be joining you here from Jojage, Montreal, the unceded lands of the Kanien'kehá:ka. I'm Dr. Heather Inuvialuit, and I'm an Inuk and Newfoundlander who is the director of the Inuit Futures project, which is hosting this really exciting panel in collaboration with the Indigenous Screen Office. And so it's my distinct pleasure to welcome you all here today and to also introduce my dear friend and colleague, the amazing Reneltta Arluk. I'm going to do a brief introduction to Reneltta, and then I'm going to hand it over to her, and then I'm going to disappear from the call and hand over the reins to our fantastic Inuvialuit colleagues. You know, as a Inuk from Nunatsiavut and being on the sort of most easterly part of Inuit Nunanga, I think I can relate to the Inuvialuit. We often feel like we're on the peripheries of the Inuit art world. And so it's a real thrill for me to get to sit and listen in and appreciate all of the Inuvialuit brilliance that's going to be on the call today. It's just an incredible honor to get to meet artists and cultural workers working across so many areas of the arts. Reneltta Arluk is originally from the Northwest Territories. She is of Inuvialuit, Dene, and Cree descent, and is the first Indigenous woman to earn a Bachelor of Fine Arts acting degree from the University of Alberta. She is an actor, playwright, poet, director, and producer, and has performed globally. Recently, she made her Stratford debut as the first Inuk and the first Indigenous woman to direct at the Stratford Festival with the world premiere of The Breathing Hole by Governor General Award-winning wit playwright Colleen Murphy. Some of her many additional credits include Mary Clement's Copper Thunderbird at the National Arts Center, touring with Human Cargo's Night, the world premiere of Chantal Bilodeau's Sila, and Hardline Productions' Red Patch in Vancouver, BC. Arluk is committed to stories inspired by Indigenous language and has worked in depth with Indigenous and minority youth throughout her theater advocacy work. She has also written, produced, performed various works under her own company, Akpik Theater, focusing on the decolonization and use of art as a tool for reconciliation. Together with Theater Prospero, Akpik Theater recently produced the Plains Cree adaptation, Pawakan Macbeth, which, if you got the chance to see it last year, was a play that had been underway since pre-pandemic, and then under the pandemic, Reneltta pivoted that project to a virtual Macbeth, which you can find online. It's really, really fabulous and a really exciting way to consider how we could virtually engage in theatrical performance. Reneltta is now the Director of Indigenous Arts at the Banff Center, and she's also in a leadership position on this project, the Inuit Futures project, and she works to ensure that Inuvialuit are considered in all of the conversations that we have and across the work with our partners. She is the Curator of Performing Arts for the forthcoming Arctic Arts Summit in June 2022, and I'm thrilled to get to work with her again. And everything she touches is magic. Thank you, Reneltta. It's so great to be able to be here with all of you, and I really look forward to this conversation. And I'm going to jump away and come back as a phone call. But please take it away.
Quliaqtuq, Heather. Ublami atitu atira Reneltta Arluk, or ublumi atitu atira Reneltta Arluk. I'm used to having meetings in the morning. Good afternoon. My name is Reneltta Arluk, and as Heather so generously and beautifully and kindly introduced, I am the Director of Indigenous Arts. I am born and raised in the North, and Fort Smith is my home community, and my Inuvialuit communities from the Aklavik Inuvik region through my father. And so I'm pretty excited. I don't want to spend too much more time talking about me, but this is an Inuvialuit panel. I get to say the word Inuvialuit, which is huge because it's usually Inuvialuk, which is one person. And so for all of us to be able to come together and talk about who we are as Inuvialuit, our practice, our process, our creativity, I'm just very, very grateful. So we'll go around in a little Zoom circle, and we'll just briefly introduce ourselves, who we are as people, and then we'll just dive into some wonderful questions and conversations with one another. So I have to my side, I'll ask Dennis Allen to speak, please.
Thank you, Reneltta. My name is Dennis Allen. I'm originally from Inuvik, Northwest Territories, born and raised in Inuvik. And I didn't start my film career or my artist career, I guess, until my 30s. I went back to college and studied at the Southern Alberta Institute of Technology in Calgary and got a diploma in film studies. And my first gig was working on North of 60, season 4, 1995. I don't know how many years ago that was, but that was quite a while ago. But that was my first time working in film. And then I went on to make films with the National Film Board and Discovery Channel. And I'm also a writer and I'm a musician. I have 2 CDs. I have a website called Dennis Allen Entertainment. If you want to have a look at it, you'll see all of the shows that I've worked on and the work that I've done. And lately I've been working, I'm a working stiff now because I work for the federal government in Corrections Canada, but I still do writing. I still write and I still play music. I would say my biggest love is writing. Making films is a lot of work. You work and it's not much of a payoff financially. It's very, the glory comes at the film festival, but that's about it. So yeah, I'm just, I'm putting a lot of my effort into writing fiction. I love writing fiction, so thank you.
Hey, Yannick, Christina, Taalrumiq.
Akana atira Taalrumiq Inuvialuit yunga quliaqtuq mutak. Hello, my name is Taalrumiq. I am Inuvialuit from quliaqtuq, known in English as quliaqtuq. I am from the Cockney and Gruben families here in Tuk. I am also Gwich'in on my father's side, from the Louis family in the Akpik, Inuvik area. I work as an artist and fashion designer and now content creator on TikTok, creating Inuvialuit specific content. I'm currently part of the TikTok Canada's Accelerator for Indigenous Creators program in partnership with the National Screen Institute. I have a few other exciting projects coming up just as a result of sharing my artwork online, making these, Inuvialuit cultural TikToks. And I'm thrilled to be here. It's really wonderful to see an all Inuvialuit panel. I know what it's like to be the only Inuvialuit in the room, often feeling the lack of representation. And that's a big part of what compels me to create and do the things that I do. Queen Aini, thank you.
Oh, wonderful. Tamara?
Hi. Just opening this. My name is Tamara Voudrach and I'm from here in Inuvik. My family is from quliaqtuq. My father is Rory Voudrach and his parents were Norma Voudrach, Norma Cockney, her maiden name, and my dad is Paul Voudrach. Yes, 3 Cockneys in here. Really cool. I was also born in Fort Smith, so I'm Cree on my mother's side. Yeah,
Hey.
yeah, I was born in Fort Smith too. Lots of connections in this Zoom. It's exciting to be here. Cool to be among so many other Inuvialuit artists, especially ones that I haven't gotten to see in a long time or even, got FaceTime with yet. So it's very cool. I'm the manager here at the Inuvialuit Communication Society.
Hey, and Marika.
Hey everyone, my name is Marika Sila. I'm an actress, a stunt performer, and entrepreneur. My dad grew up in Inuvik. I grew up in Canmore, Alberta. So sadly, I have been isolated from the culture most of my life. So I'm just doing everything that I can to learn everything I can. But it's so nice to see so many cousins in the room. I'm related to pretty much all the Cockneys and Grubens and quliaqtuq, and I'm just so grateful to be here and to be sharing this space with all of you. So thank you for having me.
And I'm in your territory because I'm in Treaty 7 territory in Banff, Alberta. So we are all connected.
Come hang out.
Well, I work in Banff, so So we should actually just hang out. That's what we should do.
Yes,
And then we could be a
definitely.
Inuvialuit in Alberta.
Yes, let's do that. That's a plan.
I thought we'd just start with just a question for all of us to kind of dig into is when you think of being a Inuvialuit, what sparks the heart with that? Like what comes to you when you think of, oh, I'm a Inuvialuit? That's what it is. And anyone can jump in.
Well, to me. Oh, go ahead, Dennis. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. I'll just start off here. Well, I grew up, we grew up out on the land because I was born quite a while ago. And while people were still, my mom and dad were still moving from the bush into town. And so we were one of the first families in Inuvik back in the late 50s and early 60s. So we spent a lot of our weekends still hunting for food. And we still had to live subsistence, and we had to, my dad was working, both my parents were working, but it wasn't enough to, to make a living. But I think more important, they wanted to keep the lifestyle up. So we spent, springs out trapping muskrats and in the summertime out of the whale camp, and then in the fall time, picking berries, and always moving around to different parts of the land, using the land at different times of the year. And to me, that's how I grew up. And that's when I think about being an Inuvialuit, I grew up listening to my dad, what we used to say, talking Eskimo, because that word was still used back in those days. And I still use it amongst my friends. And so that's what I think about, like hearing my dad and his friends tell stories, talking Eskimo, talking about how they lived in the 1940s and the 1950s and their stories. So to me, that's my identity. That's kind of where I draw all of my inspiration from, I suppose you could say.
Marika.
Do you mind repeating the question for me?
What in your heart, when you think about being a Inuvialuit, what sparks the heart for you?
My great-grandfather's book, Inuvialuit, everything that he wrote, all the knowledge, all the wisdom that he left behind in that book just is so, it's so important to me. It's one of the only resources that I've had to hold on to our culture throughout my life. And my dad, he's been able to teach me as much as he can, but he's been away from the culture for a long time as well, and did 13 years of residential school. So having that book to hold on to as a resource and going back to inspires me a lot in my art, and just shows his perseverance through hardship. And so yeah, it really inspires me.
Tamara, Christina?
Yeah, so sorry.
It's okay, you go ahead.
So when I think about what it means to be an Inuvialuit, just my life experiences, having grown up within the culture in my community and then leaving at a young age to pursue other opportunities. And there's a lot of times where I didn't even feel that I had a right to be an Inuvialuit, especially having a Gwich'in dad. So there was some people who really made that known, you're only half, or so I grew up feeling that I didn't have a right. I didn't learn a lot of the culture, what I wished I had. But now as an adult, I realize that's because my parents are products of the residential school system, so they weren't able to pass on what traditionally we would have learned from our parents and at home. But just traveling throughout, and going to school in different places, working different places, talking with people, I realized like the values I was raised with, the cultural values, family values are always there. So no matter where I am in the world, you know, I'm Inuvialuit, and just the way that I carry myself or the way I treat others reflects not only on me, but Inuvialuit as a whole. So just what it means to be Inuvialuit, you know, we are kind, we are generous, we're loving, we're caring. We'll share what little we have, even if it's almost nothing. And I see those values in the next generations, and, you know, all the good things that our grandparents and our elders taught us. And yeah, no matter how much Inuvialuit you are, whether it's one drop or full blast, you know, we all have a right to our culture and our traditions and these values. So that's a big part of my work, is just really reclaiming our Inuvialuit identity and, you know, acknowledging that we all have a right to our culture, no matter what our background is.
Thank you. Tamara, sorry.
I love that. I love, you know, we all have a right to our culture, and that's so true. Growing up, I moved around a lot. You know, when I lived with my mother, and we lived in Yellowknife for several years during our childhood, and then we were in Alberta too. We were in northern Alberta, and, you know, moving from town to town, even with that side of the family feeling disconnected from, you know, our Cree culture, it wasn't really there. So I moved home to Inuvik, to my dad and to my mom Denise. When I was about 10, I decided to stay full time, and I didn't look back. And I think one of the main reasons is because, you know, it felt like home. And I know that it's hard for a lot of young people, especially when you're raised outside of the ISR, to feel like you don't have a community. And without, you know, that feeling of community, it's hard to feel like you do have the right to your culture and a right to be who you are and say, I am Inuvialuit, right? And so in the work that I do, I always kind of have that in the back of my mind, especially when I work with youth and when we're putting on things like workshops or, you know, mentorships and now internships. It's a lot of coaching, right? A lot of coaching in confidence, confidence to just be who you are and claim your space is a big theme around here. Is like, you have a right to be at that table, right? Because one day you might be the one sitting at the head of the table, passing down an opportunity to the next, you know, Inuvialuit youth. And community and passing it forward, I guess. Those are things that come to mind for me.
Thank you. I figured that's what you were trying to do, Marika.
I'm learning. Still learning.
Oh, good.
Amazing.
I'll just share a little bit about my own history, just listening to yours and just feeling like a lot of it really connects. Like, my mother is Dene and Cree, and my father is Gwich'in and Inuvialuit. And so I really resonate to Gwich'in and Inuvialuit because they're so close to each other, and they have such a deep history. And then being raised primarily by my mother and my grandparents in that world. But and then kind of reconnecting, like I was under the Inuvialuit always, but you know, finding a reconnection when you're older can make you feel like you're maybe you don't belong in that world because you've been so much more in another world. And I've never ever felt going home to Inuvik or seeing my Inuvialuit family, I've never ever felt like I wasn't welcome. And I was always really grateful for that, because it is very challenging to be Inuit across the circumpolar north and feel like you have an identity and that you're entitled to an identity when it does feel like you're the only one in the room. And so just really grateful for the sharings that are being offered right now. I just want to dig in to each of your each of you as creative artists and kind of talk about your work and what inspires you. And so I'm going to jump over to Taalrumiq. You say you minor in arts is in your bio, but all I know you as is as an artist. And so I was like, when does she just minor in art? You have such a strong creative presence, and it's incredible to learn that you're one of the content creators. Like, that's so huge. And I love watching your TikToks using your granny self and offering the perspectives that you bring. Like, I just laugh so hard, the language. I mean, how did that come? Like, how did that come to be from your education that you gained at U of A to what you're doing now?
Well, it's been quite a journey, and I guess you could say I'm a late bloomer. I knew from a young age, I remember being in kindergarten and I wanted to be an artist when I grew up. But just my life experience taught me that, you know, that's an impossible dream. You know, I didn't believe that I could make a living as an artist until I did, until I started to believe it. And it's only in the last few years that I really started putting my artwork out there, like on social media, and, you know, talking about our history as Inuvialuit and our culture, what inspires my artwork, and just being able to use it to tell a story. As for like my education, I minored in art, but I majored in home economics, so like fashion design, foods, all. Like, my plan was to be a high school teacher and teach all the fun courses that I enjoyed, so art, sewing, cooking. But that didn't really work out the way I had planned. And it's been a long journey. You know, I am a mom of 5, so I spent my 30s having and raising babies. I have 5 children, and I've always had this creative energy. In my early 20s, I worked as a hairdresser downtown Calgary, and just that experience, you know, like looking racially ambiguous, people would always ask questions, you know, what are you? And you look like, are you this? Are you that? So I was always talking about, you know, Inuvialuit, and then telling people like, who are the Inuvialuit? And then in my university days, every chance I got, every presentation, every research paper, I would do it on Inuvialuit. And often the audience was like crickets, you know, nobody cared. So there was times where after big presentations that I worked so hard on, and nobody really cared, and I would end up in tears. But it's really nice that now, sharing the same thing that I'm passionate about, you know, like sharing who we are as Inuvialuit through my artwork, and it's receiving a positive response, and that's a really nice change. And as for my granny character, Ananak, that means grandmother. I guess just growing up with my friends here in quliaqtuq, you know, we used to make up little skits and have fun, and we'd always imitate our elders, because, you know, our elders are so cute, they're so beautiful, and they're funny. And so just imitating their mannerisms and dressing like them, and like, I look back and those were our role models. So like, that's how I want to be when I'm an Ananak. And I think that's where how I developed my Ananak character is just, I've kind of been doing it since I was young, but also thinking about, well, what would it be like if I could sit with my Nanak Alice or my Jaju Eliza, you know, if I could visit them for tea. And so that's kind of what the inspiration is behind my skits when I do the characters. And then I just think, well, how am I going to be when I'm, you know, 80? And I want to be like that loving, caring Ananak, and take care of people by making them tea, or, you know, sharing little words, and then just incorporating Inuvialuit words where I can. Sometimes I make mistakes because I'm not fluent in Inuvialuit, but I'm trying, I'm putting myself out there, and it's so important for the youth to see, like, to normalize, like, wearing our traditional garments, to normalize Inuvialuit words and phrases, you know, to not feel that shame or embarrassment like that I felt when I was young, like feeling that it was kind of embarrassing that I needed to be something else. So everything I do is just really being proud of who you are as an Inuvialuit, your background, you know, appreciating our elders, and appreciating the beauty of our clothing, our dance, our song, our language.
When you think about that, like Dennis talking about being raised that close to the land, your parents, and using that to draw like that inspiration, and that really drives your creativity. I mean, you have had a career, and you still have a career that is constantly like you talk about the writing aspect, to the filmmaking, the documentary, the music. It's all really aligned to exploring culture and language and story. And so how do you use that as inspiration, but how do you keep that, how do you trust that that's going to keep you going as an artist?
You're talking to me?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought you were talking to Christine. Yeah.
I can repeat that question if you need to.
It's okay. I just wanted to say, I just made some little notes here. So
Yeah.
when I was growing up, my dad was a storyteller. All of his contemporaries were storytellers, and we used to spend lots of time out in the bush, as we say, whether you're out whaling or you're trapping muskrats in March, you're out in the bush. People used to live. There used to be cabins all over out in the Delta, and we used to visit them while we're out. And anyways, the elders would sit and visit, and they would tell stories, mostly in Eskimo. I didn't understand them, but you knew that they were telling stories. And then when my dad did talk to his other friends, telling stories in English, because there was lots of Métis people here in Inuvik. Inuvik was a really mixture of Inuvialuit, Gutchen, and Métis people and white people. And it was really a mosaic of storytellers. So that's how I grew up. I grew up listening to stories, and that's what we started mimicking when we were kids, telling each other stories, trying to make each other laugh, repeating stories, making up new stories. And then I remember my older brother Jerry had a guitar, and there's the music part. Now him and all his friends playing music, and then my parents used to have parties at our house, because in the 70s, when Native politics was just starting to happen, our house was kind of the stopping point, because my parents were both involved in the political scene of the day. So we had all kinds of people coming through our house, and there was always music. Uncle Johnny Raymond playing fiddle, my brother Jerry chording along to him, somebody else singing a Hank Williams song. So that's where the music part came. And everybody that you knew could either squawk out Maiden's Prayer on a fiddle or sing a Hank Williams song. So that's where the music comes from. And it just translated, for me, it just translated into filmmaking years later, when I went back and I was trying to find out what I really wanted to do with my life, what my real true calling was. And I found it in writing, and I accidentally stumbled onto becoming a documentary filmmaker, which I really enjoyed. But my really true, where my heart is in writing. And I write about people that I knew, people that I grew up with, stories that I heard. I'm just translating those stories that I heard as a kid, and I create a whole nother world with my writing.
No, it's incredible. It's incredible. And then kind of looking at it from this other perspective with Marika, like you're connecting to cultural identity through social media with your amazing videos on Instagram. I love following them so much. You're such a strong advocate for Inuvialuit culture and living and really creative ways to do that. And you could see that connection within who you are as an artist. And so let's talk more about like the advocacy work that you do, what you're doing with Red Path Talent. Like that's really exciting stuff to hear about.
Yeah, so Red Path Talent is my company where we host youth empowerment programs and perform across the world, pre-COVID, of course. But the goal is to eventually get back to doing that, to hosting camps, to performing at corporate events, hosting festivals, and creating content all across the world. But I'm not sure if any of you are familiar with the term walking the red road. It's an Indigenous phrase that's kind of used amongst the entire Indigenous community, known as walking a path dedicated to sobriety, health, and wellness. And I've been sober for about 7 years. So that has been a big part of my journey. And I don't know where I would be right now if I hadn't made that choice many moons ago. And so what I do mainly with the camps is I host workshops. I teach kids the art of hoop dancing. We do dancing, acting, singing, and then at the end of the week, we're able to showcase all their newfound skills that they practice all throughout the week in front of their community so that they have a chance to perform potentially for the first time. It's a really amazing week that we get to do with the community and with the youth. And right now I'm kind of branching out into other avenues. Red Path is a movement for me, so I'm using the name under all the avenues of work that I do. So I'm doing a production company right now where I'm educating about what happened in the residential schools. But what my intention to do this is to give the public one source where they can go to learn about the residential school system and to get the views of the elders and the community leaders from the Indigenous community themselves, so that when people watch this, they get to see the perspectives and what the Indigenous community themselves want to see moving forward, so that they're able to hear our voice. And it's kind of, my goal is to create one hub where the public can go to so that they can learn about what's going on in Canada and learn how they can help towards reconciliation. And I think of where all that work kind of stemmed from, and my inspiration in the work that I do in general came from many years ago when I was watching, I think I was about 15 years old, and I was staying very caught up in what was going on in regards to the environment and what Greenpeace was doing. And I just knew in that moment that I somehow wanted to make a change. I wanted to, whatever avenue I went into, I wanted to make some kind of difference. And ever since then, that kind of through line, if we're speaking about acting terms and storytelling, has always been to make a difference and to make a positive change in the world and to push forward and really do everything for my family, my loved ones, and the community.
Yeah, it's powerful work and fun, like just really quick, it's really fun to see how you engage with your culture, but also like the strength of your advocacy. And it's just great to hear how that is, like, where that comes from is such a genuine, real place. And I think that's something that we're all feeling, is that the work that we do as creative artists comes from that genuine and that real place of sharing and generosity. So just really want to reflect on the value of generosity that you talked about, Christina, earlier. Yeah. And Tamara, when you went to Capilano University, which is a really great university where a lot of Indigenous people go to become filmmakers and collaborate, and huge collaborators. And I just wanted to kind of know a little bit more of your journey of like taking those learnings and teachings and then bringing back into the community, and what drew you home and what inspires you in the work that you do.
Awesome. I never knew that I wanted to go into film until I was in my early 20s. And even then it was more of like an exploration for me. So after I did a film course in high school, and it was a one-off course, it was a lot of fun. But mainly the product of that class was just, a goof off film, and it was really funny. But I never thought about it again. I wanted to go into communications. I wanted to go into journalism. And so I did a year in Edmonton. I was in the communications program in MacEwan, at MacEwan. And I didn't do well, but I was also just goofing around, right? I was having fun. I was young, really young, and had too much fun. So I came home and I was just like, lost. So I worked for the government in a casual job, just trying to figure out what I wanted to do, and just being home and enjoying being back with my family, my little sisters, right? About a year of that, I was like, okay, I need to do something. I'm getting bored. So I started thinking about, like, what are my real interests? Like, if I go and do something, I want to do something that I'm passionate about and that I can enjoy, that I know that I'll actually invest my time and energy into. So I thought back to that film production course in high school, and I started looking around, and I was, talking to different universities, Toronto Film School, Vancouver Film School. But then I just thought, what if there's, some kind of, even if it's smaller training, right? If it's like a year or a few months or something, from an Indigenous perspective, is there anything like that out there? Quick Google search, and I found Capilano University in North Vancouver. And the program at the time was called Indigenous Independent Digital Filmmaking, a mouthful. It's shortened now. So where it was IIDF, it is now called IDF, Indigenous Digital Filmmaking. And at that time, the director of the program was Doreen Manuel. She's still a really great friend, and she was a huge inspiration. All of the instructors we had in that program were Indigenous, and they were industry professionals for many years, years of work under their belt and professional projects. And all the students in my courses were Indigenous. We were, at first, I think we started off with like 21 students, maybe my first year there, because it's a 2-year diploma that I signed on for. And we ended up a class of like 13 that progressed together. And then we had some first years join us in our second year. But for the most part, we were together for 2 years, and we were a very small class, and it was it was a good time in my life. And I made lifelong friends, where it was very much a family, and we got to learn together hands-on all the aspects of production. But also there was a clear line kind of in the sand when we worked with non-Indigenous productions. And that was very apparent. And it was also it was a good education, like, for that to be there, that dynamic to exist, because you learned right off the bat the differences between working on non-Indigenous sets and working on Indigenous sets. There are priorities and protocols in place on Indigenous sets that you just will not get to experience on a non-Indigenous set, especially a professional, like a feature film, a larger production, right? We got that firsthand experience, and it was really eye-opening and beneficial. And we worked with some really great other students from other universities that were working on larger projects, and we got the opportunity to kind of mentor beneath them and learn the different departments. And you just got to figure out what areas of production are you really truly interested in. And for me, I really took to lighting and cinematography, but more so writing and the production management. I really enjoyed production management the most. And it's interesting because that's literally where I'm sitting right now. After school and after that program, Doreen Manuel is still there. However, she's the director of the entire BOSA Center for Film and Animation now. She's no longer just the director of that program. So that's been really cool to see as well. If anyone ever has a chance to meet her or visit the school and that center and see those programs, they have entire studios in the basement floor, huge sound stages, costuming department, all kinds of different programs. And it's a really great place to kind of figure yourself out and learn the different areas that this industry has to offer for you. And it being Indigenous, there's that whole other aspect of feeling like you're at home, which a lot of programs you don't get, right? Especially if you leave a remote or an Indigenous community and you go to a big city for the first time and you're living all alone and you know none of these people. It's very, very it's very triggering, I think, too, right? And even if you haven't experienced residential school yourself, it's in the blood, and I think that's definitely has an impact on our youth when they leave home. After that, I did come home, and my goal was to work after that program. I was just inspired to work with other youth who, like me, they didn't know what they wanted to do, or they felt like they didn't have the ability to reach out and find it. So when I came home, I was doing corporate video for about a year with the Aurora College, which I liked too, because I got to go to the 3 main campus communities, Fort Smith and Yellowknife and here, and just, record student stories and success stories and create, marketing videos for the college. And I did enjoy that because a lot of them, I knew, and a lot of them were Indigenous. Most of them were Indigenous from the community. And then after that, there was a position open up here at the ICS, and I started as a TV producer. And 3 days into the job, I was on a plane to Sax Harbor for the first time. And I got to interview elders, Lena Wolke and Samantha Lucas, who we recently lost. She recently passed. And then throughout the years, many more elders, many more community members in Inuvialuit that have inspired me to continue what we're doing. And so that journey brought me into the more production management side of things. And I was promoted to executive producer. And then now I'm manager of the ICS. And so I'm learning a lot more in this position, especially when it comes to the magazine. So that's been a whole journey itself, like not having been involved in the magazine at all before to, helping to run it it's been a big learning curve, but so rewarding.
I just think about, Dennis, hearing about like some of your mentors actually being in your family or those gatherings that are coming that inspire you with your work, and that all of us in some way have felt like we've just kind of created a path for ourselves, like we've had to really kind of find that way and find our way through. And, I always talk about how do we, because we're the path makers, how important is mentorship for you, and what do you see as a really important role? Like with the Red Path Talent, that's a form of mentorship. The youth outreach that you do is that, and how is it? It's good to talk about kind of feeling that you can feel isolated in the South, and how do you stay connected to your culture in that way? When you're away from community, like many of us are. I think, Christine, I think you're the only one. Oh, no, Tamara's there as well. But when you're like down south, for me, it's kind of like, if I can get a good meal in, I usually feel pretty good. I feel like I'm connected to my community if I have some Akpiks in my freezer, and that makes me feel like my family remembers me and care about me. And so how do we find connection to community when you're away from community, and how do we find mentorship or menteeship? Who's inspired you to do what you do now, and what do you feel like your role is as a mentor in that work as well? Any of those ones, you can jump in.
Well, speaking for myself, I find just taking time to practice the language. I every Sunday I try and get together with my dad, and we talk a lot about just life in general and moving forward, and what can we do, what steps do we personally need to take to heal, to move forward, but also to recognize where we're from, and never forget the knowledge that we do have, and making a conscious effort to learn more, because there's so much to learn. And I think it's really important for us to ask the elders questions, and to keep those conversations going, so that we don't lose that precious knowledge. But I find that personally, staying connected is easier than it has been many for many years. Even in the past 2 years, it's been a lot easier too, just because of social media and the ability for us to utilize that and stay connected with other Inuvialuit on the other side of the world. It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
For me,
Sorry.
oh no, you go ahead, Christina, go ahead. I'll be behind you.
Okay. So I just moved home in October. We made a life-changing decision to pack up our home, sell everything, and bring our 5 children back home to quliaqtuq. It was so important for me because, you know, I was raising them in the city. Often we were the only Inuvialuit, the only Inuit that we knew of in the city or, you know, in their schools. And I found it really difficult to stay connected. Just thanks to things like Facebook, you know, you're connected to all your family and friends from back home, but even that's not enough. I always treasured the care packages of mipku or bipsi, you know, dried fish, dried whale meat that I would get from home, or akpik, the frozen berries, you know, any little thing to really connect me to home. But one thing I could never shake is that homesickness. You know, community is so important to Inuvialuit. That was how we survived, was relying on each other, helping each other. And now in order to kind of succeed in the modern world, you know, we have to go off and then you're alone in a whole new culture, like a whole new city, a whole new location. And the first time I went away from home, you know, it was a huge culture shock. I experienced a lot of racism. I didn't know how to handle it. I got made fun of because of the way I speak English, you know, in my Tuk accent, just real thick. So there was so many challenges and I don't know how I got through it sometimes, you know, like I experienced a lot of depression, anxiety, you know, even considered suicide. And these are things that I know Inuvialuit go through. So speaking about it might help someone else to tell youth like, hey, you're strong, you know, you got this. Look at your ancestors, they survived. You're a survivor, you can do this. You know, we have all the same skills and intelligence and potential that our ancestors did. The only thing is we're dealing with such a rapid change, you know, just like from my mom's generation to my children is a huge change. Like my mom was born in a tent on the tundra to now my children, you know, are spending their days playing Fortnite. Like it's just such a rapid change. So I think just really encouraging our youth and our young adults and reminding them of who and what they are, who they come from, just even giving positive comments on their social media posts can be a form of encouragement. And currently in quliaqtuq, we're under a containment order because of a COVID outbreak. But once that's done, there are plans in the works to host some workshops with local youth, like art, sewing, or I was even thinking of doing something fun with TikTok. So just really being able to give back to the community in that way. And then I remember growing up, I never forgot the kind words of, you know, certain elders. And one in particular is Nelly Pokya, who passed away this year. She always has a special place in my heart because no matter how we behaved or what we were going through, she always had a kind word and she really believed in us. You know, she always told us that we're going to do great things, and she knew our hearts and she just exuded that love and kindness. So I just think about those people in my life and, you know, I hope I can be a fraction of that for others. But till then, I'm just going to keep encouraging and just spreading positivity. Kuya Naini.
Yeah, jump in, Marika.
Thank you, Christy, for bringing that up. It actually reminded me of one of the ways that I've been able to connect with our culture, being so far away from up north and growing up here. I was born in Yellowknife. We moved out of Yellowknife when I was 5. So I grew up in a primarily Caucasian white town, fairly racist at times, and it was not the easiest being separated from the culture, not feeling like I was in belong to one community or the other. But one thing that I've always gone back to is connecting with my spirituality, because that's something that is so close to us. It's so strong in our culture. And the way that I do that is just through meditation and listening, because I believe that we are our ancestors, and all of our blood, sweat, and flesh is that of our ancestors. And if you just listen, you can hear the wisdom of our ancestors just through our own thoughts. And that's how I've been able to stay connected. Doesn't matter where I am in the world. I just go back to my working on my own spirituality. And I don't know if you guys are open to listening to a spoken word piece that I wrote. Some of you may have already heard it, but I would love to share something that I wrote because this is an Inuvialuit talk. I just thought it'd be so cool to take this time to share this with you. And this is a shortened version, but I'd love to if you guys are open to it. Awesome. Through our backbones live our ancestors' blood, sweat, and flesh. Our genetics, their resilience lives on strong through me, through you, through us, like rivers running through our veins. The pictures in our visions, in our dreams, are reflections of their time and reality. Time, the only thing that separates us from walking beside our ancestors. The same land we stand on, the same sun tans our skin, the same air we breathe, the same water we drink, the same stars and moon we gaze upon. DNA, healing through remembering. We are our ancestors. Everything you need is within your mind and within your hands, because here we are, made up of all the warriors, healers, hunters, mothers, and leaders that came before us. They not only walk beside us, but they walk in our shoes as we follow in their footsteps, paving pathways for future generations. Speaking through us, our protests are echoes of their war calls. We know they surround us, protect us, but also they live on through us, experiencing for the first time what it feels like to live for a dream and not only for survival, celebrating with us as we dance, while the beat of our hearts sync with the rhythm of the drum. The blood of many warriors is coursing through our veins. Our blood, sweat, and tears is their blood, sweat, and tears. What we feel, they know, speaking to us through thought. Our intuition is our North Star guiding us. After everything, our minds may have forgotten, but our blood remembers the resilience. It is in you. Your DNA is a testament to the winters we have survived, the diseases we have overcome, and the wars we have faced and won. You are stronger than you think. Thank you.
Oh, thank you for sharing. Koyani, Koyani.
Oh, thank you for allowing me the space to.
Ah. And Dennis, you were gonna jump in there.
Oh yeah, geez, hard to follow these two. No, just like staying connected. I stay on the phone. I Facebook people, but mostly like I like telling stories. I like calling my brother Jerry Kassoon. A lot of you guys know Jerry. He's a great storyteller. I call my other older cousins or friends from different communities, and just try to stay in touch with them and just tell stories. We just try to carry on that tradition of storytelling, and that's what keeps me connected. Or with my sister Shirley, Big Mama Shirley Kassoon. She's call her every once in a while, and we'll tell stories and talk about Granny, talk about our grandmother, or we have lots of relatives. Here's a favorite pastime of Inuvialuit is talking about our relatives.
That's That's what it seems like in the chat even. I'm just loving this chat. I'm going to save this chat because it's so incredible.
So it's like, and then being related to everybody too, you know, like Tamara, just talking to your dad on this little chat here. I know your dad, your grandmother is related to my dad, and Christina grew up with your uncles, and so just being connected. And Marika never really grew up with your dad, but I work with your dad currently, and I know all your family from Tak. And you know, you guys have such a and everybody else who's on that little chat thing, you have such a rich history, and Reneltta, your connection to the Delta through Martha Harry's family and stuff. All of you have such a really strong connection to, you're rooted, and that's how I feel. I feel rooted. Number one, because I grew up in the bush, man. I spent my whole entire childhood out on the land, and I know who I am. I know where I'm from. You know, my mom made the mucklucks that I walked on, and when you're that close to the land, you know who you are. And you can put me on the moon, man, and I'll Facebook somebody.
You know, when I got to see Martha Harry, I hadn't been back to Inuvik for a very long time. And it was Arctic Winter Games, and the Arctic Great Northern Arts Festival was at the same time. And there's a whole bunch of us artists coming up north at the same time that the sports were there. And that Aunt Martha Harry, and they had heard that I was coming. Like before I even got to Inuvik, they heard I was on my way. I don't know how. And I went, and her and her sister were sitting next to each other watching the walrus skin, but it's more like Trump. Yeah, the blanket toss. Thank you, Dennis. And I saw them, and I went over, and you know how like the elders, they just like, oh, like they just hold that sound for so long. It's like, oh, we never saw you for so long. And it was just so beautiful. And I cried, they cried, and just that welcoming back into community. And I did the blanket toss for them. I was terrified of heights, but I did it anyway. And then I would visit her throughout the week that I was in town, and what they said, just sharing about being on the phone, is that there was a relative who spoke Inuvialuit in California. And so every month or whatever, so many times a year, she would call Martha, and they would talk Inuvialuit to each other so that she never lost the language. And so those connections, you know, even though we don't always nomadically travel physically, there's still such a desire to stay connected. And so I just really value what you were saying about just picking up the phone and calling and just knowing. Yeah. Well, I think I don't know how much time we have left. I don't know how much time do you have left, Maggie?
Yeah, it's 2:00, so we can kind of sum up.
Thank you. But I just wanted to, like, we have a little bit of time if anyone wants to share any last words, or if you're good, or I'll save the chat. You'll be able to watch this later on too.
Yeah. So Reneltta, I was just taking little notes here about what made our elders who they were. And it was humility. Because when you grow up in the bush and you're so dependent on the animals and the ice and the water and the wind, you're very small. You're just a tiny little part of the equation. And when people get to, our elders knew that they knew that life and death was a really delicate dance. You're just dancing on a knife's edge from day to day. You learn humility. And when I think of where our elders got that from, and what could be the greatest asset that we have as just as human beings. That to me, it's humility. And if we could bring that into our art, then we're being human and being Inuvialuit from there.
Oh, quliaqtuq, Dennis, I really value that teaching. Thank you, and that reminder. There's a wonderful question from Erica, who sells really amazing earrings that we all want to buy. There's a question in the chat. She's saying, what's next for all of you, for all that you're doing? So maybe that's a good way for us to think about going forward and sharing us forward into the future in that goodness with the teaching of humility and generosity. So what's next? We'll go Tamara.
Currently still the manager here. We have a lot of stuff going on. Right now we're, with COVID, a lot of the stuff that, we've been doing has been halted, especially the production, right? Being able to gather stories has been difficult. However, contrasting to that, the magazine is doing really well in that department because so much has transferred over to virtual. It's had to change the way the magazine operates and the way collaboration happens. So in the past, Desire Accent magazine has been largely, interviewed and written and copy edited by the editor-in-chief. And for many years, I don't know, actually, maybe even Dennis might know, but, for as long as I can remember, and like to my knowledge, the editor has been non-Inuvialuit. So, and it still is. However, our new editor has been with us for a couple of years now, and his name is Jason Lau. He's actually observing in this Zoom right now. He's been with us for a couple of years, and he has changed the way the magazine is put together in a really significant, it's significant changes. And the largest change is that the magazine is very much written, photographed, illustrated, and now partially even co-designed by Inuvialuit. So in the past, the design was even outsourced. That is not the case anymore. Jason does the design in-house, and he's actually training our Inuvialuit intern, Lexis McDonald, Panigak McDonald, who is a up-and-coming graphic designer, amazing illustrator, and they are working to train Lexis and in design and layout. So the idea is to just use these processes of putting the magazine together to bring in and train more Inuvialuit to be able to do that work, to be able to copy edit their own pieces or the pieces of others, to be able to interview others and write the piece, to be able to photograph and be paid for that work, to be able to design and illustrate. And then eventually, Jason's ultimate plan is to one day step down and have a designer sitting, in the editor chair and be able to, Inuvialuit, to be able to run the magazine itself. And for the most part, save for Jason's position, it is. So that to me is it leaps and bounds away from where it was. And we're very proud of that. So going forward, if any Inuvialuit youth or just anyone else has, a desire or wish to learn more or to contribute to the magazine in any way, contact us, magazine@ics.live, or you could Facebook the magazine, or give us a call here at ICS and get involved. And in our TV department now, we have, we're currently in production again. So we haven't been able to really go into production for our internal series. And right now we're working on a docu-series titled I Survived North of 60. It's a working title, but I like the title. I want to keep it.
Dennis, you can contribute.
Yeah. And it's the brainchild of our Inuvialuit contracted producer, Jerry Thrasher of Taalrumiq. And it's essentially a survival reenactment series where we sit with elders or other travelers who have had these harrowing stories out on the land that are comfortable with sharing those stories in a way that's respectful, that includes them from the beginning to the end of the actual production of their episode, so that we can provide the story, but also, be able to teach a lesson there to other young travelers who can watch that and, learn what to do in that kind of situation. So it'll be entertaining, but we want it to serve a purpose, right? And follow the mandate of promoting and preserving our culture and our history and our experience. And so that show is essentially that. And then we also have our narrative show, and that's an anthology, a horror anthology, and that was created by our past manager, Desmond Loreen. And initially it was going to be based off of the Inuvialuit legends and myths, but there's a consultation process that needs to happen for that. And we also just didn't want to, touch some of those stories right now yet, because they are still very real for many people. We can talk about things like little people or Akpik, but you really need to consult community and talk to elders, because people have stories that are still very close to them and their families. And so we're focusing it back on, it's set in our communities and inspired by those late night storytelling, gatherings in homes and, scary storytelling. Everybody does that, eh? In all communities. So, so we'll be shooting hopefully in Tuck when the cases go down a little bit more and the community is a little bit more receptive of us. We also don't want to enter communities unless we're able to, right? Or, if the SAOs and the hamlets and the ComCorps are comfortable in terms of this pandemic. But also Akpik, and try to get some more of those episodes shot. So by the end of the year, we'll have some more episodes. I Survived North of 60 should be done season 1, and we can share that with you all. We're also producing live shows. So starting in January, you'll see some more of our live shows streaming on Inuvialuit TV. And that's on Shaw Direct and Arctic Co-op Cable and online. So watch our Facebook too for any updates. And outside of ICS, just working on different creative projects that I can't really discuss right now, but mainly just, focusing on writing and making more connections with, reconnecting with people that I've worked with in the past and seeing where that takes me. But my main focus is here at ICS.
Amazing. I am in love with that magazine. Yeah, like honestly, I love that magazine so much. And it's helpful to receive it when you live down south and to see the language and the pictures and read the stories and see the people in the magazines. Like, it's just so excellent. So thank you so much for sharing about that and for the deep work that you do. I sit on the board for the Inuit Art Foundation, same with Heather. And so we work closely with the Inuit Art Quarterly, but yeah, I'm like, I love this magazine. So thank you. What are you doing? What are you up to? Oh.
Sorry, I'll just also quickly acknowledge that, we've featured Christina, we've featured, and Dennis also submits a lot of stories to the magazine as well. So just koi naini for everybody here in this chat, even who has contributed to the magazine and the work that we're doing. It's really important to always just have, a platform for us and to connect with each other. And that magazine is free for all beneficiaries. So if you are not receiving the magazine, you're entitled to, no matter where you are in the world. We'll put you on the mailing list. You'll get the next one. If you aren't going to receive this one, we can mail you a copy. This, it's filled, it's always going to be filled with Inuvialuit stories. And really our first audience is Inuvialuit. So we want it to feel like, you're having conversations with people from the region and beyond. We have many Inuvialuit that don't live in the ISR that are involved with the magazine as well. So kind of.
Yeah. And what about you, Dennis? Thank you. Maybe Tamara, sorry, Dennis, just throw the email address or a website for people to get in contact with the magazine and organization. Thank you. Okay, Dennis.
Okay. I'm not making films anymore, but I like to write. I have a collection of short stories that I wrote when I was living or submitting to News North years ago. So I'm just kind of adding on to those, and I'd eventually, you know what, geez, I work for the federal government and I get paid every 2 weeks and I'm lazy. But I make up stories on Facebook. But no, in all seriousness, I want to kind of write my way out of my job where I am right now, and that's going to take me a while. But I also like to do because I work with offenders here, and we're trying to change the way they're thinking. It's called cognitive behavioral therapy. That's a pretty big word for an old Eskimo, but I want to. I would eventually like to go back home and offer healing camps back in our communities, because there's a big push now for reconciliation, and the government is really supporting that. And I've been encouraged by people lately to start thinking about offering that service as well. You know, when you're an artist, you do everything. I do kind of a little bit of everything. I play music, I make films, I write, I carve, and also communication is an art. So I feel like if I can communicate to anyone, I can influence their thought pattern. And we all do that. But especially with Indigenous people, because we are still hungover from the residential school, and there is a hell of a mess yet out there. And I throw myself on that mess too, because I'm a product of that as well. And I'm trying to give back by doing the work that I'm doing, and I would like to expand even further. So that's my plans anyways there, Miss Arluk.
You can work in the jail system and still be an artist. You don't have to quit your job. You make
No,
me
I'm getting
laugh.
tired of it.
Yeah. But it's good work. Thank you for sharing that. It's really powerful. Art is healing too, right? Like that's why we do it. We've healed ourselves as artists. And Christina?
Yeah, I have some exciting projects coming up. So currently I'm halfway through this TikTok Accelerator for Indigenous Creators program. It's the inaugural program through TikTok Canada and the National Screen Institute. So that's been going amazing. And just the support I've received from the Inuvialuit community, I really appreciate. And I love to receive messages, you know, when people say, oh, we love your videos, or when are you going to do another one? And this really made me laugh. And that's what it's all about. And just as a result of my TikToks, it actually led to some other amazing opportunities. So I'm going to be in a short film called Inuvialuit, which translates to She Gives Birth. It's a Cree language film, so I've been taking Cree lessons to learn the script, and I'm playing the role of Auntie Mary. She's a 70-year-old Métis elder, so that's going to be fun. I'm really excited for that. All my experiences have led to this point, so that's a big project that I'm working on. And in June, another really exciting thing for me, I'll be a vendor at the marketplace for Indigenous Fashion Week Toronto. So I'll also be doing a lot of sewing, creating some of my original Taalrumiq adornment and garments, all Inuvialuit adornment and garments. And yeah, it's going to be an exciting experience. And I'm just going to keep, you know, doing my thing. I need to express myself creatively. Even if nobody sees it, I'm still going to create, and I'll still put it out there and keep making videos, and just, yeah, trying to enjoy life and keep a positive attitude and just keep being real deadly Inuvialuit.
Quinny. And Marika left a really wonderful message too. She had to jump off. we're all like back-to-back Zoom worlds at this point. But I just want to say koyanini, koyani, kamasicho to all of you for taking the time to join us, to listen, to laugh in the chat, to ask questions, and just to offer just a bit of who we are today. I'm just real grateful. My heart's very full. And masicho to Inuit Arts Futures and Maggie and Heather and team too that allow us to bring us together today. Let's
Thank
stay
you,
in
everyone.
touch.
Kuinaini,
Bye,
Masi.
everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Ilanilu.
Ilanilu. Ilanilu Chinday de Quinsal Chelakat. That's what Nelly Corney used to say at the end of CBT. Okay, take care, everyone.
Bye-bye.